The Academy outcast Jake Morrison sat in the back row of the Zentari Imperial Academy's most advanced quantum mechanics classroom, his human eyes struggling to follow the holographic equations that danced through the air. Around him, his classmates absorbed the complex formulations with ease, their superior intellects processing information at speeds that made Jake's human brain feel like an ancient computer trying to run modern software. As you can see, Professor Quindle explained, her ethereal form shimmering as she manipulated the mathematical constructs. The quantum resonance patterns require precise neural synchronization to achieve faster-than-light communication across galactic distances. Crixtal, a towering Zentari noble whose biomechanical enhancements gleamed beneath his translucent skin, raised one of his forearms. Professor, surely this is too advanced for the primitive human to comprehend. His species only discovered quantum mechanics a few centuries ago. Snickers echoed through the chamber as dozens of alien eyes turned toward Jake. Veltar, whose aquatic form rippled within his environmental suit, added his voice to the mockery. On Hydrosia, our younglings master these concepts before their first molt. How can a species that still uses chemical propulsion for most of their space travel hope to understand such complexity? Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks, but forced himself to remain calm. He had endured 3 months of this treatment since arriving at the Academy as part of Earth's first student exchange program. The Galactic Coalition had reluctantly accepted humanity after Earth's recent development of faster-than-light travel, but most species still viewed humans as barely evolved primates who had stumbled into spaceflight through luck rather than intelligence. Perhaps, Jake said quietly, raising his hand, the human perspective might offer something different. We approach problems from angles that pure logic might miss. The classroom erupted in laughter. Zephyr, an energy being whose form crackled with controlled plasma, pulsed with amusement. Human intuition? How quaint. Your species still believes in emotional decision-making over computational analysis. No wonder your technology is so primitive. Professor Quindle, ancient even by Etherian standards, held up a translucent hand for silence. Intelligence takes many forms, students. The universe is vast and complex. What seems primitive to one species might be revolutionary to another. But her words fell on deaf ears. As the class continued, Jake found himself increasingly isolated. His attempts to participate met with either condescending explanations or outright dismissal. When the lesson ended, he gathered his simple paper notebooks while his classmates uploaded the entire lecture directly to their enhanced neural networks. The situation worsened in the Academy's training facilities. The daily physical assessments were designed to test the diverse capabilities of the galaxy's species, but they consistently highlighted human limitations. In the speed trials, Crixtal's bio-enhanced muscles propelled him at velocities that made Jake look like he was moving through thick syrup. The Zentari's reflexes, augmented by quantum processors embedded in his nervous system, allowed him to react to stimuli in microseconds. Observe the difference, Crixtal announced to the gathered students as Jake struggled to complete the obstacle. Course, the human requires nearly a full second to process and respond to visual stimuli. My enhanced neural pathways complete the same task in 0.003 seconds. Jake stumbled as he tried to navigate the shifting platforms, his human balance struggling with the Academy's artificial gravity that constantly fluctuated to accommodate different species. Behind him, he could hear the whispered comments of his classmates. Such slow reflexes, Veltar gurgled through his suit's speakers. On Hydrosia, our larvae move faster than adult humans. The human brain is so inefficient, added another voice. They actually waste energy on emotional processing instead of pure computation. But what hurt most was the pity. When Jake finally completed the course, dead last as always, some of his classmates offered patronizing encouragement, that stung worse than outright mockery. "You did well for a human," said Lyra, a graceful Celestian whose gossamer wings shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. "Your species has such limitations to overcome." Jake nodded politely, but inside, his frustration grew. He knew he was capable of more than they gave him credit for, but how could he prove it when every test was designed to showcase abilities humans simply didn't possess? The breaking point came during a tactical simulation in Professor Quindle as Advanced Survival Strategies course. The class was divided into teams to plan a rescue mission on a hostile world. Jake found himself grouped with Krikstal, Veltar, and Zephyr, though it was clear they considered him dead weight. The human should stay with the transport, Krikstal declared as they studied the holographic terrain of the simulation planet. His primitive nervous system cannot process the tactical requirements fast enough to be useful in the field. Agreed, Veltar added. The electromagnetic storms on this world would overwhelm his unenhanced senses. He would be a liability. Jake studied the terrain display, noting patterns in the storm systems and geological formations that his classmates seemed to miss in their focus on technological solutions. What if we used the storm patterns to our advantage? They follow predictable paths based on the planet's magnetic field variations. Zephyr's energy form flickered with what might have been laughter. Magnetic field variations? Human, your species cannot even perceive magnetic fields without instruments. How could you possibly understand their tactical applications? By studying the patterns, Jake replied. Sometimes the best solutions come from observation rather than direct sensing. His teammates dismissed his suggestions and proceeded with their high-tech approach, relying on advanced sensors and biomechanical enhancements to navigate the simulated environment. Their plan was elegant and efficient, dependent on capabilities that far exceeded human limitations. When they presented their solution to the class, Professor Quindle nodded approvingly. Excellent use of your species' natural advantages. However, I notice you've assumed perfect technological function throughout your mission. Why wouldn't we? Krikstal asked. Our equipment is tested and reliable. Technology can fail, the professor replied mysteriously. The universe has a way of challenging our assumptions. After class, Jake approached the professor privately. Professor Quindle, I know I'm not as fast or as strong as the others, but I feel like I have something to contribute. My teammates won't even listen to my ideas. The ancient Etherian studied him with eyes that held the wisdom of millennia. Young human, strength comes in many forms. Your species has survived and thrived on a world that would challenge most of these students. Perhaps it is time they learned that lesson. What do you mean? Professor Quindle's form shimmered with what might have been a smile. I have been planning a field expedition to Nexus 7. It is a world that tests survival skills rather than technological superiority. Would you be interested in participating? Jake's heart raced. A real field expedition would be dangerous, but it might also be his chance to prove that humans had value beyond what his classmates imagined. Yes, Professor. I'd like that very much. The announcement came the next day. Professor Quindle informed. The class of 12 students had been selected for a week-long survival expedition to Nexus 7, a world known for its harsh conditions and primitive ecosystem. The mission was designed to test their ability to adapt and survive without relying on advanced technology. Krikstal immediately raised an objection. Professor, surely the human should not participate in such a dangerous mission. His species lacks the physical and mental enhancements necessary for survival on a hostile world. The human volunteered, Professor Quindle replied, and I believe the experience will be educational for all involved. Veltar's suit rippled with concern. But what if he becomes injured? His primitive biology cannot self-repair like our enhanced systems. Then you will learn the value of teamwork, the professor said firmly. The expedition leaves tomorrow. Prepare accordingly. That evening, Jake packed his simple survival kit while his teammates loaded their gear with advanced equipment. Krickstall carried biomedical repair units that could heal wounds in minutes. Veltar had atmospheric processors that could extract water from any environment. Zephyr's energy form required no sustenance, and other team members brought technological marvels that seemed to solve every conceivable problem. Jake's kit contained basic items: a knife, rope, fire-starting materials, first aid supplies, and a simple compass. His teammates looked at his primitive gear with undisguised pity. "Human," Krickstall said, his voice carrying what he probably thought was kindness. "Perhaps you should reconsider this expedition. Nexus 7 is not a world for the weak or unprepared." Jake shouldered his pack and met the Zentari's compound eyes. "I've been preparing for this my whole life," he said quietly. "You might be surprised what a human can do when we have to." As the transport ship prepared for departure, Jake felt a mixture of anxiety and determination. His classmates had spent months proving their superiority through technology and enhancement. Now they would face a world where those advantages might not matter. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Jake felt like he might finally have a chance to show what humanity was truly capable of. The ship launched into hyperspace, carrying 12 of the galaxy's most advanced students toward a world that would test them in ways they never imagined. In the cargo hold, next to crates of sophisticated equipment, Jake's simple survival kit waited, alongside instruments that could reshape matter at the molecular level. Neither Jake nor his classmates knew that their transport ship was about to encounter the worst electromagnetic storm in Nexus 7's recorded history, or that the technology they relied on would soon become useless metal and circuitry. They were about to discover that sometimes the most primitive solutions are the most reliable, and that the species they had dismissed as weak and inferior possess strengths that no amount of technological enhancement could replicate. The stage was set for a lesson that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. The revelation on Nexus 7. The transport ship's stellar advancement shuddered violently as it descended through Nexus 7's atmosphere, its sophisticated navigation systems sparking and failing under the assault of the planet's massive electromagnetic storm. Jake gripped his seat harness as the ship bucked like a wild animal, while around him his classmates struggled with equipment that had never failed them before. "This is impossible," Krickstall shouted over the roar of stressed metal and failing systems. "Our quantum stabilizers are rated for any natural phenomenon." Zephyr's energy form flickered erratically, destabilized by the electromagnetic chaos surrounding them. "The magnetic field fluctuations are beyond our sensors' ability to process. We're flying blind." Professor Quindle's voice crackled through the ship's failing communication system. "Emergency landing protocols are in effect. Prepare for surface impact." The ship struck the ground with tremendous force, skidding across a rocky plateau before coming to rest in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as the students picked themselves up from the wreckage. Many nursing injuries from the crash. Jake was among the first to stand, his human flexibility allowing him to absorb the impact better than his more rigid classmates. He quickly assessed the situation while others were still recovering from the shock. "Is everyone alive?" he called out, moving to check on his teammates. Veltar's environmental suit had cracked during the crash, leaking precious atmosphere. "My containment systems are failing," he gurgled in panic. "I cannot survive in this environment without proper sealing." Jake knelt beside the aquatic alien, examining the suit's damage. "The crack is small. If we can create a temporary seal, your suit's internal repair systems might be able to handle the rest." He pulled out his basic first aid kit and applied a waterproof patch that, while primitive by galactic standards, effectively stopped the leak. Krikstal attempted to activate his biomechanical enhancements, but the electromagnetic interference from the storm had disrupted his quantum processors. "My neural networks are offline," he said in disbelief. "How is this possible?" "MEMP from the storm," Jake explained, helping him to his feet. "Electromagnetic pulses can disable electronic systems. The more advanced the technology, the more vulnerable it is." Around them, the other students were discovering similar problems. Their advanced equipment was either completely dead or functioning erratically. Biomedical repair units that could normally heal any injury were useless chunks of metal. Atmospheric processors that could extract water from thin air sat silent and dark. Lyra, the Celestian whose gossamer wings had been damaged in the crash, looked around in growing panic. "Our emergency beacon isn't working. How will rescue teams find us?" "They won't," Jake said grimly, pulling out his simple compass. "At least not quickly. But we don't need to wait for rescue. We can get ourselves out of this." His classmates stared at him as if he had suggested they could fly by flapping their arms. "Human," Krikstal said slowly. "Our survival depends on technology that no longer functions. How do you propose we survive on a hostile world with primitive tools?" Jake looked out at the harsh landscape of Nexus 7. The planet's red sky was torn by constant lightning, and the wind howled across jagged rock formations. It was a world that seemed designed to kill any life form foolish enough to land on its surface. "The same way humans have always survived," he said, "by adapting." The first priority was shelter. While his classmates argued about how to repair their failing equipment, Jake began gathering materials. The ship's hull provided some protection, but they needed something more substantial to survive the night when temperatures would drop below freezing. "What are you doing?" Veltar asked as Jake began arranging pieces of wreckage into a windbreak. "Building shelter," Jake replied, lashing metal plates together with rope from his kit. "The ship's hull will conduct heat away from our bodies. We need insulation and protection from the wind." "But our environmental suits regulate temperature automatically," protested Lyra. "Not anymore," Jake pointed out. "And judging by the power drain, you've got maybe 6 hours of life support left in those suits." That sobering realization spurred the others into action. Under Jake's guidance, they constructed a rough but effective shelter, using salvaged materials and techniques that seemed impossibly primitive, too. Beings accustomed to matter replicators and molecular assemblers dot as the alien sun set, the temperature began to plummet. Jake built a fire using debris from the ship and his fire-starting kit, creating warmth that their failing technology could no longer provide. "How did you know to do that?" asked Zephyr, whose energy form was barely stable in the cold. "Humans have been making fire for hundreds of thousands of years," Jake explained, feeding the flames with carefully chosen fuel. "It's one of our oldest technologies, and it still works when nothing else does." The night brought new challenges. The planet's nocturnal predators were drawn to the crash site, their bioluminescent markings visible in the darkness. When the group's motion sensors failed to detect the approaching creatures, it was Jake's primitive senses that saved them. "Something's out there," he whispered, his human hearing picking up the subtle sounds of movement that the aliens' enhanced senses had missed due to electromagnetic interference. "Impossible," Krikstal muttered. "My audio processors detect nothing." "Your audio processors are fried," Jake replied, grabbing a burning branch from the fire. "Trust me on this one." The creatures that emerged from the darkness were unlike anything in the galactic databases. They moved with predatory grace, their multiple limbs ending in razor-sharp claws. But they stopped at the edge of the firelight, their alien eyes reflecting the flames. "Fire," Jake said quietly. "Most predators instinctively fear it. It's a universal language." By morning, the storm had passed, but their situation had not improved. The ship's power core was dead, and their advanced equipment remained useless. However, Jake had been busy during the night, using his knowledge of terrain and weather patterns to plan their survival strategy. "There's a river valley about 15 kilometers north," he announced, studying the landscape with his simple compass. "And map, fresh water, shelter from the wind, and possible food sources." "How can you possibly know that?" Veltar asked. "Our geological scanners are offline." Jake pointed to the patterns in the rock formations and the way vegetation grew in certain areas. Water flows downhill and leaves signs. Plants grow differently near water sources. The wind patterns tell you where the valleys are. You learn to read the land when you can't rely on sensors. The trek to the river valley became a masterclass in human adaptability. When Lyra's damaged wings couldn't carry her over rough terrain, Jake fashioned a crude but effective walking stick from ship debris. When Krixtal's bio-enhanced muscles, designed for high-tech environments, began to fail in the primitive conditions, Jake showed him how to move efficiently over uneven ground. "Your species evolved for this," Jake explained as they navigated a treacherous slope. "Every human carries millions of years of survival instincts. We just forgot how to use them because we didn't need to." At the river, Jake demonstrated skills that left his classmates speechless. He found fresh water by following animal tracks and tested it for safety using methods that predated their civilization by millennia. He constructed fishing tools from salvaged materials and caught enough protein to feed the group. When Zephyr's energy form began to destabilize from lack of proper nourishment, Jake created a crude but effective electromagnetic field using the ship's remaining power cells, allowing the energy being to stabilize. "I don't understand," Krixtal said as they sat around another of Jake's fires on their third night. "Your technology is primitive, your physical capabilities are inferior, and your neural processing is inefficient. Yet you have kept us alive when all of our advantages failed." "You?" Asterisk. Jake poked at the fire, sending sparks dancing into the night sky. "Maybe that's the point," he said. "You've all become so dependent on technology that you forgot how to think without it. Humans never had the luxury of biomechanical enhancement or quantum processing. We had to learn to survive with just our brains and our hands." Veltar, his suit now fully repaired using Jake's improvised techniques, rippled with what might have been embarrassment. "We called your species primitive." "We are primitive," Jake agreed. "But primitive doesn't mean inferior. It means basic, fundamental. When all the advanced stuff fails, the fundamentals are what keep you alive." On the fourth day, they heard the sound of rescue ships approaching. Jake had built a signal fire using green vegetation that produced thick, visible smoke, a technique so simple that none of his technologically advanced classmates had thought of it. As the rescue shuttle landed, the students prepared to board with a new understanding of their human classmate. But it was Krixtal who spoke first when they arrived back at the academy. "I owe you an apology," the Zentari said, his biomechanical enhancements once again functioning perfectly. "We all do. We judged your species by our standards instead of recognizing the value of your differences." Word of the Nexus 7 expedition spread quickly through the academy. Jake's simple survival techniques, dismissed as primitive just days before, were now studied with intense interest. His classmates realized that their technological superiority had made them vulnerable in ways they had never considered. Professor Quindle summoned Jake to her office after their return. "You have taught them a valuable lesson," the ancient Etherian said. "Diversity of approach is the galaxy's greatest strength. Each species brings unique capabilities to our shared future." "I just did what any human would do," Jake replied. "Exactly," the professor smiled. "And that is what makes your species so remarkable. You adapt, you endure, and you find solutions that others cannot see. The galaxy needs that perspective. In the months that followed, Jake's experience at the academy changed completely. His classmates no longer saw him as a primitive curiosity, but as a valuable teammate whose different approach to problems often revealed solutions that pure logic missed. He was invited to join study groups, included in research projects, and treated as an equal among the galaxy's brightest students. But more importantly, the entire academy began to reconsider its assumptions about technological advancement and species capability. Jake's demonstration that primitive techniques could succeed where advanced technology failed sparked a new field of study in adaptive survival and cross-species capability integration. Years later, as Jake graduated with honors and prepared to return to Earth as humanity's first interstellar ambassador, he reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point. He had arrived at the Academy as a representative of a species the galaxy considered barely civilized. He was leaving as proof that intelligence, adaptability, and determination could not be measured by technological advancement alone. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not in matching other species' capabilities, but in bringing something entirely different to the table. In a universe full of enhanced beings who had transcended their biological limitations, humans remained stubbornly, primitively, and powerfully organic. And that, as it turned out, was exactly what the galaxy needed.